Welcome everybody to the Scale Up Show. This is your host Ryan Staley, and I have a very special guest with me today. I have Vinay Patankar. He is a three-time founder, was a digital nomad for 10 years, which inspired him to create Process Street, bootstrap two companies, now VC backed. And Process Street is the future of no-code workflows and AI for process management. Vinay, welcome. Happy to have you on the show, man.
Hey, Ryan. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm pumped, dude, because I was telling you before the show, I've been nerding out on AI for a while. So love the process side and some of the things that you're doing over at Process Street. But before we get too deep into your company, what you're doing with AI, let's do a real quick revenue rundown so we understand where you're at in the stage of the journey. So where are you guys at in terms of like your revenue or stage, just so that the listener, has an understanding of kind of where we're at?
Yeah, sure. So we raised our Series A. We're about 50 people on the team. We have thousands of customers. We started more in the SMB space, so we have a lot of older, really small customers that was kind of, that we acquired at the early days of the product, and we've been slowly working our way up mid-market and towards the enterprise, slowly getting there.
So is that sexy beast of moving up market, and it's fun, but there's definitely a lot of patience and grit required to make that happen. So,
Yeah.
so that's awesome. So you hit most of my questions right from the get go. You had, are you bootstrapped or funded? You had the kind of the stage, and then the people. Talk to us about your solution really quick in like 2 or 3 sentences, so everyone has some understanding on in terms of what exactly it does and the outcome it creates.
Sure. So we're an AI-powered process management platform. We started with our core product, which is our workflow product, which enables teams to manage, track, automate repeatable processes. So usually there's a human involved, and a lot of the time multiple teams, and we'll orchestrate those humans as well as automate data, manage forms, manage approvals, manage communication around the process. So that's the core product. It's the workflow product. We've since expanded the platform out. We also have a pages product, place to put your company handbook, SOPs, policies, a forms product that's like a Google form, and a datasets product that's like a Google Sheet Lite. And they all work together to create this kind of engine for managing complex, repetitive processes, or simple, but usually there's more value on the complex ones.
So is your segment or your customer base, is it more, I know you said you're starting to move up market more and look at that, like what's the minimum kind of team size that organizationally you look for to basically for it to be a solid fit for what you guys do?
Yeah. So our ideal customer is probably 50 to 1,000 employees. But we do have a startup product for companies that are smaller than that. And that's like a self-serve product that you can basically get your whole company on. And we're a horizontal tool, so you can use Process Street as the home for all the processes in your company, your handbook, and everything else, and be used across your entire team, which is pretty common in the smaller businesses. But a lot of the time, we do end up focusing on particular use cases or teams. So we tend to get more success in the more compliance regulated industries and teams. So finance, HR, real estate are all very common places for us. IT.
Okay. And I mean, that makes a lot of sense, I think, with what you're talking, and then that company size. So the part that I was really interested in, and this gets more in your background, your journey, like you mentioned in the pre-show just about like how your past kind of led to you creating this company. So can you just walk us through that journey and what it was like and kind of how you got to this point? And then how did you decide it was like a real living product that you needed to share with the world?
Yeah. So my journey, kind of entrepreneurial journey, started when I left Australia to start traveling as a nomad and needed to figure out how to make money so I didn't have to go back to my suit and tie job. And when you're in that situation, there's not too many options. You can get a job locally somewhere and teach English or something like that, which is a common thing that a lot of travelers were doing. But this was 2009, 2010, and it was just the beginning. Shopify had just launched. There were, early affiliate marketing and stuff going on. And doing my research, I was like, oh, there's actually, you can make a lot more money with an internet business. There wasn't really this remote work culture yet. That wasn't really a thing, but there was definitely, you can run your own kind of internet company. And maybe that was a good thing, because maybe if it was today, my solution would have just been to just get a remote job and not actually go down the entrepreneur path, because that's just like so much of an easier option today. But from back then, it was like, yeah, you had to do your own thing, or else it would be pretty difficult to make a real living. So I started launching internet companies. I launched an e-commerce store. I launched a bunch of lead gen sites and SEO sites. And that was kind of across a couple of different companies and did different things. I was selling some services. I was doing lead gen. I was selling drop shipping products. And after a few years of doing that, I started to get some repeatability. I built out a team. I was using remote workers in India and the Philippines to manage the company. And I personally got to the point where the team was, I think, about 20 people. It's like 15 going on 20. And I started feeling the overhead of management, right? And I was like,
Mhm.
oh, I've got all these people I need to manage, and I need to give them, constantly be feeding them with work. I need to be constantly quality controlling what they do. And then and then at the beginning, I was actually living in Asia, and then I was living in Europe, and then I made it over to America and South America. And so my time zone for dealing with Asia kind of got worse and worse. And once I was in the Americas, that's pretty much the exact opposite time zone.
Oh
And
yeah.
so not only was I feeling this pressure of like having to learn how to manage a team and get all that done, but now I was doing it in a complete opposite time zone. So I ended up finding myself staying awake until 6 o'clock in the morning, many nights a week, just to be able to essentially micromanage this team in Asia and make sure that everything was getting done the way that it needed to get done on the timelines it was supposed to get done. And, that just became a massive pain for me, a personal pain of like staying awake until 6 o'clock in the morning every day. And so I just went to try to solve that problem. Like, why isn't there software that can do this for me? Why am I, it just seemed, it also just felt like what I was doing was very repetitive, right? I'm just basically managing these repetitive processes that are going on. And every day, did you check this? Did you check that? Did you make sure that was done? Did you make sure this is done correctly? Did you get that approved? And it just felt something like I could put into software. And so that was the original problem I was trying to solve. And that was the inspiration for Process Street. And with that problem, top of mind, we went about trying to build a solution for it. And that was the original version of Process Street, which we built for my company, used my company as the first customer, as the guinea pig beta customer. And once my company and team was using it consistently every day, we started exploring the options of spinning it out into its own product. And, 6 months to 12 months later, we realized that was the real opportunity, was selling the software. And so pivoted into
Okay.
that full time. Yeah.
And which company, when you built it for your company, were you in the lead management space? Were you like a marketing agency then, or what, or like in a?
Yeah, no. So I was running a portfolio of 20 different websites. Some were SEO, selling ads. Some were selling leads. Some were selling like some digital goods. So it was really, I had this kind of portfolio of websites that I was managing, and they were making, between $200 and $5,000 a month or something, like per website, and across
Okay,
all of them had a business. Yeah. So
I can
we
see where
didn't
that'd be a lot to piece together. You
yeah,
know what I
so all
mean?
these like you're making content, you're doing website enhancements, design changes, maintenance, running ads, managing email lists, and so there's just a lot going on. But largely all just repetitive stuff. Once a site is built, and then you create a, a content schedule for it, you're like, yeah, we're going to create one piece of content a week. We're going to send one email newsletter a week. We're going to run 20 experiments on our ads each week. Then it just becomes, keep doing that forever, right? That just becomes very repetitive. And so the work, maybe like spinning up a new property, that was a project, but the vast majority of work that was happening in the business was process. And it's funny because now we have this thing called the process manifesto where we talk about this, but Um, it there's a lot of sexiness around projects, right? People buzz around projects, OKRs, strategies. Let's design this new thing. Let's launch this new product. Let's do this rebrand. And that tends to be where a lot of the um, excitement and drama, when you watch a TV show about a startup or about a business, like they're talking about, oh, this product launch or this product failure or this hire that came in that was successful or not successful, or this M&A that we did. But that's actually not what happens most of the time in business, right? Those are the sexy, like, emotional highs and lows of business. But the majority of work that gets done in a business is just executing on repeatable processes, right? The majority of work Apple does is not design iPhones. It's build and sell iPhones, right? It's like, that's what they're doing day in, day out. That's why they have
So true.
50,000 people working on just like the daily production and running of the stores and selling of the phones and supporting of the phones and fixing the broken phones. And like, that's actually where the majority of like hours in the business get done. And you can look at any business, Salesforce, the majority of work is like selling software and supporting software. It's not buying companies or launching new products, right?
Right.
And that's the same for every business. Like, processes is actually where the value of a business gets created, right? In the day in, day out execution of that product and service. And so I realized that, look, this is actually where, it may be more fun to launch these new sites and try to get these new revenue streams, but the actually more important part is like keeping the existing revenue streams coming in and growing, and doing that in a way that's stable and scalable.
That's so true. If you don't have repeatable revenue, you don't have a business, right? So I think you nailed it. Do you think that's going to change with, I should say, like the democratization of AI and how simple it is to create like products or micro products now with all the no code and basically, the large language models enabling just breaking down the barriers of what it used to take to create products? What's your thoughts on that?
No, I think where the biggest value AI is going to add is into the execution of these repetitive processes. A lot of those products that get launched, the point of those products is going to be to make the repetitive processes of a business more efficient or higher quality or cheaper, right? And so you look at any of these things, you look at an AI writing tool, you're talking about AI sales tools, right? Like, it's not that this is like the majority of work is still not going to be not selling, right? You're just going to now have either a team that has 90% attainment instead of 70% attainment, or you can support a team of 30 instead of a team of 20 because like they have more efficiency on their leads, or they're able to, in the same amount of time, book an extra three opportunities or whatever, right?
Exactly.
So I see it as just another form of automation, and the main value of automation is in streamlining this repetitive, mundane work that humans don't like doing, but that is required for human prosperity.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, and I agree with you on that. So let's talk about that, like in terms of like, how do you see AI automating work? Like specifically, there's a lot of different paths we can go down with this, whether we're talking about
everything,
agents or other areas, but like, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I could talk about where we're using it. So we've built 3 AI features so far this year. The first one we built was a workflow generator or a process generator. So workflow is like our internal term, but you can think about it as a process. So you're gonna say you're I don't know, starting a new team, right? You're like, okay, we now need to launch a customer support team because we got the product to a point that we have enough customers, and me as a founder, I've been doing all the support. Now I want a team. Okay, well, this team needs some type of playbook to follow, right? They need, how do I respond to this? What do I do? How do I escalate this? How do I refund this? So you've got to start creating a playbook for this team as they come in. And our generator just helps reduce the time that it takes to create that playbook, right? Traditionally you'd start with a blank page and you're like, let me write down what they got to do. And this is the most basic AI, generative AI use case, but it's like, generative AI maybe it's not going to write that whole playbook for you, but maybe it's going to cut down
Mhm.
the time that it's going to take by 50%. It's going to get, maybe you can get an outline that you can start working from, or you can get a template that it will build out for you that gives you, some progress towards where you're trying to get to. Same when you're writing emails or any type of document or whatever these days. It maybe not doing all the work for you, but it's automating some of the work, right? It's reducing the time. So that's one. The next thing we built was an importer. So using the same workflow builder, but when we use a prompt, you just type in, "Oh, I want a customer onboarding process for a payroll tool," and
Mhm.
it'll understand some of that. It knows what customer success and onboarding and payroll tools are, and it will come up with something, but that's probably not going to be exact what your exact business needs. You're going to have specific tools that your team uses. You're going to have specific methodology. You're going to have debt in your company that you've got to work around, and whatever, technical or operational debt, whatever. And so things that the AI couldn't possibly know that it had to include, right? So we built an importer that basically will let you take a document. Say you have documented a playbook. Say you've diagrammed out a Visio diagram of a workflow and how it needs to run. You can basically take that, feed it into our AI, and it will scan the document and then build out a process street workflow that has all that stuff encoded into software. So it has tasks and form fields that people need to fill out, and due dates when things are due, and assignments for who needs to do it, and logic based on if this happens then that happens, and approvals for when things need to be approved, and logic, and like blah blah blah, and integrations, and like so we can kind of take a very basic document and something that you would have then had to like copy this, add this rule, add this condition, add this assignment, add this form field, name this form field, add this subtask, name the subtask. Like
Oh,
what
yeah.
you would have had to kind of do would have taken maybe hundreds and hundreds of clicks to kind of take that document and turn it into an interactive form-based workflow. We can just do with a single upload now, right? So that can take something that could have taken hours, many hours, and make it seconds, right? So that's another example. Then the third feature that we built is what we call an AI task. It basically allows you to use AI within your workflows. So if I have a workflow that gets kicked off from a customer email or a support ticket, I can take that data and I can run it through GPT, and I can do stuff like this. So it's like, what's the sentiment of this ticket, or summarize this request, or turn this into action steps, right? So I can take that content and do stuff with it. Or I could mish and mash different form field data that I have with the with an AI prompt. So I can say I have I'm onboarding a new employee, and I have the customer's name, I have their resume, I have their start date, I have their job title, I have their manager's name, all those fields inside my ATS, my HR system, inside Process Street, wherever I can access that stuff from anywhere inside. With Process Street, I can say, take all those data points and say, write me a welcome email for this person, and it will write a personalized email, and it will talk about their school they went to, and it will take points from their resume and include them, and it will talk about the job they're starting and their hiring manager and their start date, and it will integrate all that into a nice email and write it for you, and have that be an automated email that goes out as part of the workflow, right? So you can start to kind of use AI intermingled with any of the data in your workflow to do all sorts of interesting things. You can do math equations or formatting of text, or separate these fields, merge these fields, reformat these fields from comma separated into bullet points, like whatever you want, right? You can kind of manipulate data in pretty interesting ways. So those are all things that just would have taken people time, right? Oh, you got to reformat this from comma separated into a bullet point list. Like, okay, that's like 10 minutes every time you got to do that, right? You do that
Right.
10
Yeah.
times a week. Like, that all these like small things start to add up inside these digital knowledge workflows, right? That you kind of call them. And a lot of that stuff can just start getting chipped away and chipped away. So you ideally get it to the point where the only moment that humans need to get involved is when you're uniquely using human creativity, or maybe you're using human quality control somewhere, right? But besides that, most of the other work is automated.
Yeah. No, I mean, I love your use cases and how you kind of architected that, I think the import function would be huge for folks that have things sketched out, or even the assistance in like terms of creating it, like the playbook. I think that's fantastic. I guess like what would you say like across your entire client base are like the most three, or I should say the top three highest value processes that organizations use Process Street for, or that they leverage it for? I would love to hear just your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so HR, finance, and real estate are probably our big ones. Um,
Okay.
so the way that you can think about Process Street, it's similar to a lot of collaboration platforms out there, that you have, tasks and assignments and due dates and forms, right? Like that people fill out. But a big difference is that Process Street has a builder and a collaborator model, or like a builder and a runner, we call them, user model. So there's people that are defining and programming the process. Like, this is exactly how the process has to run. They are creating the rails, right? Like, it has to run this way. Like, we have to file our taxes this way, right? There is no room for creativity here, right? In fact, being creative will get us fined, will penalize us, will cost us our license, right? Like, we don't want to be creative in these scenarios. There are other teams and parts of a business that you do want to like support that creativity, and there are types of businesses and teams within businesses where you don't want that creativity, where you want
Oh yeah,
compliance,
definitely.
right? And so the model of our product with this builder runner model, it maps very well to these compliance heavy, regulatory heavy types of teams and industries. Real estate's a good example. Like, when a real estate lease or transaction is happening, it's not like it's not something that is like made up for each deal, right? Like, when you're selling software, your contract with your customer is unique to like the next company's contract with the customer. The terms are different, and the conditions are different, and the whatever. But in real estate, the contract and the terms are defined by the state, right? And so everybody that's transacting in that state has to follow these exact same regulations. And if you don't, you lose your real estate license, right? So there is an opportunity for creativity or for iteration, right, on
Oh yeah.
this. It just has
Yeah.
to get done that way. So that's where we add the most value, is when the teams
Okay.
are organically operating that way, right? But
So
that being said, there are lots of, say, marketing activities, for example, or sales activities that actually are pretty process driven. Like, we have tons, like, we have a lot of big podcasters that use Process Street for editing and publishing their podcasts, because once it's a weekly podcast or a daily podcast, that actually becomes a pretty repetitive process. And it's different to like a rebranding exercise in marketing, where that's much more of a project, right?
well, I'm gonna have to look into that, man. I'm gonna have to check that out. I love the concept of the automatic podcast publishing, because there's a lot of underpinnings that I have associated with the show, So I'm definitely gonna check that out.
And
What's your
definitely,
take on like what's that? What were you gonna say?
I was going to say, definitely if you have a team as well. So that's where a lot of the value comes in. If you have a podcast producer, if you have guests, if you have an editor, and then you have a designer, and then you want a flow that connects all of them, and you're pushing in recordings in the front end, and you're like, we're in progress of 5 episodes right now. One's waiting on the designer, one's waiting on the editor, one's waiting on the producer. Like, that gives you that kind of control and visibility into everything.
Okay. Awesome. Makes sense. What's your take on AI agents?
They're going to get better and better, but I'm not really using anything besides GPT personally right now. I know a lot of people in our engineering team are using GitHub Copilot, for example. So I think that they're starting to get very useful for specific use cases, and they're only going to get more and more useful both for specific use cases and generalist use cases.
Well,
But
have you heard of
I think
Meta GPT at all?
we're all going to have multiple AI co-pilots and coaches. I was I've had this conversation, but I can't imagine, like, if you had a child now or anytime soon, I can almost guarantee you that a lot of what you teach your child is going to be influenced by your AI assistant, coach, or whatever you want to call it, right? Because
Really?
it's gonna be like, my baby's doing this. Why is it doing this? And the AI is gonna be like, oh, maybe it's this or maybe it's that. And you're like, oh shit, thanks, right? Like, why would you not? Who would not use that ever, right? Like everyone will use that.
It's true. It's
Like
true.
you already do it with Google, right? It's just like it's just a
True.
slightly better experience. But
Dude,
most parents
that's
are
a
already doing that with Google today.
good way to explain it though, because it is right. Like you're having health problems, you look up Google, you get tapped into WebMD, you get the shit scared out of you because you think you're gonna, you're dying of cancer when you're just short vitamin D or whatever, right? Like, so there's examples like that a lot. Like, so I could see that with parenting too. It's like, why is my kid doing this? So I think that, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's not something I've thought a ton about, but it's funny you say that because literally yesterday I saw something about that where can't remember the name of it, but basically, I think it was OpenAI invested into
I saw
a
that product
co-pilot.
too.
Is that which one it is? It's called BERT or something like
I
that.
forget what it's
Is that?
called, but yeah, it's like a family
Yeah.
scheduling, like reminder, like product. Yeah, that's a good example too. And I mean, that's a bit more of a lower consequence product, right?
Right.
In that it can, oh, you mismanage a to-do list or a scheduling or something, the consequences are lower than it tells you should teach your child this, right? But I think that's where we're going.
No, it's gonna get crazy soon, like fast. So, like, let's shift gears a little bit. Go back to the business. The one thing I didn't ask you is just curious because you mentioned you got thousands of users and you've grown pretty fast. I love the concept of what you're doing in the business. Like, what's your primary go to market strategy, and then like in terms of revenue growth, right? Not just overall go to market strategy. And then I would love to hear just like how you've been scaling the business with it.
Yeah, so primary has been product growth loops and content, right? So those have been our two primary like marketing engines that have then driven like an inbound sales motion, which usually starts with a trial and then gets them like segmentation based on company size and some geography and things like that, and then either gets routed to like a self-serve funnel or a sales funnel. And so that's our main go-to-market engine. We do other things as well, right? We do some offline stuff. We do some podcasting stuff. We do some outbound. Those all combined wouldn't outperform or wouldn't be bigger contributors than the kind of standard inbound funnel. And so the way that we scale that is we just work on scaling marketing to drive more leads, and then the sales team kind of follows as leads grow,
Yeah.
and as ACV grows as well. So that's kind of the other factor too. So we can also support a larger sales team just by moving up market and being able to just extract more revenue from our same leads.
Oh yeah, totally makes sense. So what's your biggest challenge then, moving up market or growing the business?
Scaling marketing.
That's
No,
funny.
yeah, well, so that's probably the biggest challenge, is scaling marketing like in an affordable way, right? In a cost effective way. And then moving up market, the biggest challenge is just like the complexity of functionality that those customers require. A list of things that they need, and the overlap is small from enterprise to enterprise relative to SMB to SMB. So yeah, just whatever, all the security things, they need very powerful integrations and customization and admin controls and customization and branding and a lot of things that these big companies are very, very fussy about that the smaller businesses are not. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. Sometimes the smaller ones are a little more laid back on the. Actually, a lot of times they are.
Yeah, but
So
they're also spending 5% or 1% of the money, and so like,
true.
sure, yeah, you're more laid back when you're buying a toy car than when you're buying a Ferrari about like, what's the quality of this thing that I'm buying, right? Like, and
That's true,
the
man.
price
That's
the
true.
price tag impacts that a lot. Yeah.
That's funny. That's a good analogy. I love the toy car versus the Ferrari. So Unfortunately, we are up on time, Vinay. Where can people find you? Where can they find out more about Process Street? And then we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter or X, I guess, at VinayP10. But the best place to check out Process Street is just our website, process.st. Sign up for a free trial, play with the product, check out our YouTube videos, and chat with support if you've got any questions.
All right. Well, I really appreciate having you on the show. Like I said, I was checking out your website a lot before you came on. Really, really love what you're doing. Love how you're integrating AI in a process. And there's a massive, massive need for what they are doing over at Process Street. So definitely go check it out. And then check him out on Twitter/X and see what tweets he's dropping there. But thanks for being on the show, Vinay.
Thanks, Ryan. Great to be here. Appreciate it.
All right. And we will see you all on the next episode.